All right, let's begin. This is Random Thoughts from County Antrim on December 6, 2020. And I'm your host, David McDonnell. And this is my half hour of Random Thoughts, as well as some historical tidbits and yarns, legends, and whatever else I decide I want to talk about for the half hour. Now, today I wanted to talk to you about castles. Two in particular, and if I have time, I might talk about one or two, maybe even three more. But I've always been fascinated by castles, and many Americans are. And that's because, I believe, it's because we don't have any castles in America. I mean, there's some buildings which might look like castles, but they're more like country homes or the like. They weren't built as a defensive fortress like a true castle. And why don't we have any castles? Well, for whatever reason, Native Americans didn't want them or build them. And by the time Europeans came to North America, castles were already outdated as a defense against enemy attacks. And so even if we had castles here built when early settlers got here, they'd been long gone by now. They would have been torn down to make way for a strip mall or whatever. So we just don't have castles in North America. And castles are all over the place in Europe, almost all in ruins. And they're in ruins not only because they're hundreds of years old, they're in ruins because they were used for the purpose intended, which was to defend against an enemy attack. And so they were used in warfare. And castles worked reasonably well for many centuries as a defense. But a castle wall didn't hold up very well to enemy artillery fire. Cannonballs could break through a castle wall, and that's why castles have become obsolete. English lesson, for example. The word castle comes from the Latin castrum, and it means a post or encampment. And it kind of crept into the English language through the Normans and the Romans and the Normans and the Anglo-Saxons. In Irish, the word is Caisleán. And you don't see Caisleán in too many place names in Ireland. What you see more often is the word dun, like in Dunluce or Dungannon or Donegal. And that word kind of evolved into English pronunciation of Down. So you have Portadown and County Down. And the word dun in Irish means fort. So you see dun in place names much more than you see Caisleán, although you still see the English version castle in many Irish place names. Now the first one I want to talk to you about is Carrickfergus Castle. Carrick is an Irish word for rock. And the castle and the town name is literally the Rock of Fergus. The Fergus was a descendant of an Aryan tribe which gained control of the lands on both sides of the North Channel, and it was included what is now County Antrim and the west coast of Scotland, Argyll, and other regions in between. And Fergus became king of this region in the 5th century. And as a result, he traversed back and forth across the North Channel many, many times. And the North Channel is that body of water which separates Scotland from Ireland. But one of his voyage in the year 501, whatever that is, 1600 years ago, in the year 501, that was his last voyage, because his ship ran aground in the coast of County Antrim. And the rock, or Carrick, on which his ship crashed is called Carrickfergus, hence the name, Rock of Fergus. Now, remind me, if you will, to change my will, I think. If I ever drown, I would like them to change the name of the nearest rock. I would love that rock to be forever after known as the Rock of David, or Carrick David. Just a wish. I hope my survivors honor my wish. I've spoken about the town of Carrickfergus before, but not much about the fortress. It was first settled in around 1170, and the Normans invaded. The town was in about 1170, and the Normans invaded shortly thereafter. And the Norman lord built a fortress at Carrickfergus in 1177. And he built it on a peninsula, and so originally about three-fourths of the perimeter was water, leaving just a small entranceway to the fortress, to the castle. A little more than that now. It's only about a third of the perimeter surrounded by water now because of land reclamation. But initially, it was almost three-quarters of it was water. At Carrickfergus, the fortress remained in Norman hands for a half a century or so. The English took it in the 13th century. It kept it most of the time thereafter. The McDonnells captured Carrickfergus in the 1500s, although the English took it back. A century later, the Jacobites took the castle, but the British forces under William of Orange retook it. That was one of the Jacobite wars. There were two Jacobite wars, as an aside, and Americans wouldn't know about either one of them. Except the second Jacobite War is the setting for the TV series Outlander, very popular television series set in Scotland during the second Jacobite War. The French took the castle in 1760. That was during the 7 Years' War. That war was also being fought in North America at the time. We usually call it the French and Indian War. And that was the war that ended up with the British taking over Canada. The French ship looted Carrickfergus in 1760, and then as they were leaving the bay, they were caught by the British Royal Navy and taken prisoner. But it's been British ever since. Now, despite those battles, the castle remained largely intact. As a result, it's one of the best preserved examples of 12th century Norman castles. And as you wander around the place, you get a good feel for what it would be like to live in a medieval castle. Now, if you're McDonnell, you might get a good feel of what it would be like to die in a medieval castle. And because in the middle of the castle, there's a courtyard, and that's where the English conducted public hangings. And as you might have surmised from some of my prior talks, the McDonnells were a rebellious lot, and many McDonnells were hanged by the English in the gallows at Carrickfergus. Other thing about Carrickfergus, you might get an idea. This is taking history to an extreme level, but you might get an idea of how medieval people relieved themselves. Because there was built into the walls in a couple of places at Carrickfergus, a portion of it where it's near the water, there are a couple of toilets. And they're built on the outside wall with a hole that goes over the water. And so if you relieve yourself there, the fecal matter or whatever else comes out goes directly into the bay. So it probably would not be a good idea in those days to take a swim around Carrickfergus Fortress. Now the bay, by the way, it was called then Carrickfergus Bay. It is no longer. Carrickfergus was the largest settlement in the region for many years. But there was a community starting in the 1700s and thereafter. There was a community further south in the bay, which grew much more rapidly and grew into a real city. And I'm talking about the city of Belfast. And somewhere along the line, they changed the name of the bay from Carrickfergus Bay to Belfast Loch. Now, it's not a loch or a lake, but it's a bay. But it's called Belfast Loch anyway. Now, I want to show you a photograph of Carrickfergus, the fortress of Carrickfergus. And if you bear with me, someday and I don't know when. Someday I'm going to figure out how to do this podcast on a split screen so that I can do graphics along with my presentation. But if you take a look at that right there, right below this, right here, that's Carrickfergus. That's the Carrickfergus Castle. And as you might guess, that was taken at night. And the photographer was somebody that I know well. Her name is Linda McDonnell. And she took most of the photographs in my book. She took a number of photographs during the day, but this nighttime photograph just looks so much nicer, and it really gave the castle, really highlighted it. So that's Carrickfergus, a place where many McDonnells were hung. Now I'm going to move to another castle, and it's a very important castle that's very near and dear to me because it's mine. It's my castle. And I'm referring to Dunluce Castle in County Antrim. I put it in the cover of my book. Maybe I'll do a little close-up here. That's Dunluce Castle in County Antrim. Now, it's built on the edge of a cliff. It overlooks the Atlantic at the northern edge of County Antrim. And it's quite iconic. It's the photographs are all over the place, and it's actually it was used for the filming. It was used as the House of Greyjoy in the HBO series Game of Thrones because it just fit the image they were looking for in Game of Thrones. Now, it too was built by a Norman lord sometime in the 13th century. But it was the McQuillans, the McQuillan clan, who acquired this site and built most of the castle. And it was a home of the McQuillans until the middle of the 1500s. Now, what happened then? The McDonnells took it. Now, the McDonnells and the McQuillans fought a series of battles over the years, and the result was that the McQuillans ultimately were just driven out of the region. And Dunluce and that entire region of Antrim became part of the McDonnell domain. I won't describe all those battles, but I want to tell you about one site of one of them. It was a battle fought around Bonamargee Abbey. And the abbey became an open cemetery for the dead. There were so many dead, they were just bringing bodies over and putting them at the abbey. And in those days, soldiers were buried where they fell. Shallow graves were dug and the soldiers were put in them. And for centuries after this battle in the 1500s, farmers tilling the soil would find the remains or the bones of one of these soldiers, and they would carry it over to the abbey. And the abbey wall was kind of filled with the bones of these dead warriors. And I got another photo, also taken by Linda McDonnell. Bonamargee Abbey. Whoa, I just lost a page. Maybe I can just show you it this way, too. I just ripped a page out of my book. But that right there is Bonamargee Abbey. See if I can get a little closer. Now, you see the red flag in the middle? That's the pin of a green. The abbey is in the middle of a golf course. And I don't know, it might be a two-stroke penalty if your ball goes into the ruins of the abbey. And when we were taking that photo, Linda had to wait quite a while. We moved around trying to find the best angle. She picked her angle that she wanted to photograph the abbey. And of course, there were golf carts going back and forth all the time. And she had to be very patient to wait for the golfers to be out of the picture because she didn't want any people in the picture, just the abbey. And I was tempted when there were not any golfers around to run over and grab the pin and yank it, take the flag out of the pin so she could take a photograph of the abbey without it looking like it was in the middle of a golf course. But we decided against it because we finally decided it actually looked better if you see the ruins of Bonamargee Abbey in its present state, which is smack dab in the middle, perhaps a hazard, a two-stroke penalty hazard in the middle of this golf course. Now, Dunluce itself was the site of its own battles. They were between the the McDonald's and the McQuillans, the McDonald's and the English. And in the 17th century, there were the wars between the Protestant armies and the Catholic armies, all of which subjected Dunluce to considerable damage. And as you can see from the photograph, very much standing today. It suffered a fair amount of damage. But the destruction of Dunluce was not so much by its position in warfare, but rather was Mother Nature. The periodic storms and the heavy waves eroded the bottom of the cliff for over many, many years, over many centuries for that matter. And by the year 1639, it was too much. Now, as the story goes, the head of the McDonnell clan and his wife were waiting for dinner one evening. And then suddenly, the castle's entire kitchen collapsed and fell into the sea. And the entire kitchen staff fell along with it. Now, the only survivor of the kitchen staff was a boy, a young man who was late for work. And he was on his way to work, and he saw the whole thing happen, the whole kitchen collapse into the sea. And then, at least that's the story. In any event, Dunluce does not have a kitchen. Now, what's left of Dunluce was taken by the British. It's still owned technically by the McDonald's. It's owned by Alexander McDonnell, the 9th Earl of Antrim, who's now 85 years old. But it's managed under a deed of guardianship, and the guardianship goes to the Northern Irish Environmental Agency, and it's deemed a monument in state care. Now, I have a plan which I want to share with you. Now, certainly anybody who does podcasts, anybody who does videos, want them to go viral. I'm not sure why, but everyone always wants their video to go viral. But this is a podcast I do not want to go viral. I only wish to share this video, this plan, with those of you who are now listening. Because Dunluce, it was once a fortress guarded by warriors. But today, first of all, today it's closed as a result of the pandemic. But even pre-pandemic, it was manned by 3 people. And I'm sure that'll be the staffing when this pandemic is over, when and if it's ever over. But one person inside the fortress is like a park ranger. He conducts tours, hands out information, prevents vandalism, that sort of thing. The one ranger in Dunluce. There's a second individual at the entrance, and he collects money for tickets to get in. So you got the guy in the ticket booth. And the third person at Dunluce is in the gift shop. They have a clerk in the gift shop. So there you have it. You have a ranger, ticket collector, and person in the gift shop. Those are the only 3 people at Dunluce Castle. So here's my plan. As soon as the pandemic is over, I'm going to Dunluce. And anybody who wants to come with me can. And together we will storm Dunluce Castle and take it back from the British. And I'm sure we can overcome that staff, that meager staff at Dunluce. I don't know if we can hold it for long against the Northern Irish Police or the British Army, but perhaps we can. In any event, that's my plan. Take back my castle. I guess I have time to talk about another one. I got a couple more I wanted to talk to you about, but that's a story about Dunluce Castle. The other castle I wanted to talk to you about was Ballycine Castle, and it's in County Mayo. And it's not really a castle, it's more of a tower fort, would be, I think, more a descriptive term. It's only 24 feet by 18 feet with 2 floors. There was a little tower going up a little bit further that was even smaller. And the entrance to this was not on the first floor. The entrance was in the second floor. You had to go up a flight of stairs to get inside the fort. and it has no windows. It just had slits, and the slits would just allow air to flow inside, and also allow you to shoot arrows out at any intruders. But that's Ballycine, and it was built in the 13th, 14th century, and the Burkes took over that region and took over the castle in the 14th century. And by the 15th century, it became the home of some McDonnells. The McDonnells of Antrim were a mercenary clan, and during this period they often traveled to other parts of Ireland and went into service for other clans. And many McDonnells entered the service of the Burkes in County Galway and County Mayo. And they were assigned guards and assigned to live at certain castles. And one of these was Ballycine. Now, today, Ballycine is part of the European Community's Nature 2000 network of protected areas. And it's not because of the castle. And I'm going to show you a picture of the castle shortly. It's because much of that region in Mayo had been reforested with non-native trees to meet Ireland's lumber needs. But the forest around Ballycine, one of the few remaining forests of alluvial woodlands and bog woodlands that were native, indigenous to this area. So the area is closed to vehicle traffic, but it does contain some numerous trails and walkways. And I found Ballycine using these various walkways. And it's not on many maps. It was I knew generally where it was from the historical research that I did before. And I did meet a gentleman in a nearby village who told me I could find it if I used a specific trail into the forest. So my wife and I took a hike on this trail. And I have to confess, she was not eager to do this. She was a wee bit nervous on this adventure because it wasn't much of a trail, and she was kind of afraid of getting lost. She even left breadcrumbs, sort of a la Hansel and Gretel along the way, so when we got to where we were going, we could find our way back. Now, eventually we did find the castle, and it's a bit off the track. I was a bit off the trail. And let me show you a picture of the castle, because you'll get an idea how creepy it is. Let me see if I can do it there. Not the best view, but I don't know if you can see that. I got to do it this way. Man, it's just really hard to do this correctly. But I don't know if you can see the castle there, right on my the end there. But there's not much left standing. And it's in the woods, and it's very green and creepy looking. But that's all that's left of the castle at Ballycine, where many McDonnell warriors lived in service of the Burkes. Now, I think I have time to tell you about one more. Now, the Ballycine Tower Fort is one of 4 or 5 that were occupied by the McDonnells in this period when they were in service of the Burkes. I found many references to these castles, but I didn't totally understand what they were all about until I pinpointed each one of them on a map. And once I pinpointed them, I realized each one of these castles, or tower forts as you wish to call them, formed somewhat of a semicircle around the bastion of the Burke clan at Ashford Castle. And each one of these tower forts were within a easy day's march of each other, and within an easy day's march of Ashford Castle. So in the event of an invasion, the men at one castle could quickly come to the aid of another, or quickly go back to Ashford Castle in aid of the Burkes. So that was their protective semicircle that the McDonnells lived in when they were in Mayo and Ashford in service of the Burkes. Ashford, by the way, I think I got a picture of Ashford in here. It's one of the most beautiful castles in all of Ireland. It's was built by the Burkes in the 12th century. They was taken yet again by the English. Let's see if you can get a picture of this. Let's see if you can see that photograph. Oh, wait a minute. What am I doing here? That's in the way. There you go. Book's falling apart, but that's Ashford Castle. Beautiful castle in County Mayo where the Burkes lived. Now, it was taken by the British when they invaded this region in Galway and Mayo. And it was lived in by English landlords for many centuries thereafter. And it was acquired by a member of the Guinness family in the 19th century. Today it is a 5-star hotel, extremely exclusive, very expensive to get in. One last story, I think, about the castle. So when the English invaded Galway and Mayo to take the land away from the Burkes and the McDonnells, they ultimately won. And they brought with them stonemasons, a team of stonemasons. And stonemasons, as you know, are quite skilled at building things. But these stonemasons were not brought along with the English army to build anything. They were brought along to tear things down. And I want to show you a photo. The one on the bottom there is Shrule Castle, with the ivy growing, or whatever that is, growing on the side. It's yet another tower fort, this one in County Galway, that was occupied by the McDonnells in reasonable proximity to the Burkes. Now, you can't tell from this photograph, but this castle only has 3 walls. The main highway is on this side, and so you drive by, you see the 3 existing walls, but it only has 3. The east side, the side you don't see in the photo, was torn down by the stonemasons. Now, Shrule Castle, by the way, does have a current use. Again, when you drive by, you come by this way, so you don't see the open wall on the other side. If you go in that wall, that open wall, as I have done, what you will see is many, many empty beer cans and beer bottles and broken beer bottles. And you'll see a few old lawn chairs. And so the olden days, the medieval use of that castle was a tower for the guarding of the Burkes by the mercenary McDonnells. And the current use, the modern use of Shrule Castle, is a place for Galway teenagers to have a drink of beer and enjoy contact with their friends in total privacy without anyone able to see what they're doing behind the castle walls. So that's my podcast today, my tour of Irish castles. Don't forget to take a look at my website, clandonald.net. I've been spending some time on it, so all the old podcasts now are there for you to, there are links to get to them. I'm in the process of making other changes to the website to update everything, but it's a process. Send me an email at clandonald@gmail.com. Like and share my Facebook page, Clandonald. And until next week, don't forget, be smart, be safe, and do the right thing. So goodbye for now.